following animations were provided by John Higton. John served as a National Service radar mechanic at RAF Bempton between 1957 and 1959, working underground in the bunker. This was known as the hole to those that worked there. John returned to Bempton in 2003 and was appalled with the condition the site had been left in. This is what inspired him to create a permanent record of the Bempton he remembers. John describes Bempton as a quiet and efficient part of Britain's radar defence against the Soviet Union. He was shocked to see it vandalised and reduced to a burnt-out shell. While it was in operation, the station was top secret, so there are very few official records. There are only a few aerial photographs, general arrangement drawings and an incomplete set of operational records left relating to the site. John used these remaining records and his site survey as the basis for the following video. A lot of the detailed information came from RAF equipment manuals. In order to create these animations, John had to acquire some computer graphics skills. The result of all this work is a unique record of RAF Bempton during the Second World War and the early years of the Cold War. Since John created this video, the bunker has been completely sealed and is no longer accessible. It is also located on private property.
1940. Britain had been at war with Germany for 4 months. A vital part of her defence was the chain of radar stations around the coast. The chain home, or CH station, could detect aircraft at high and medium altitude, but low-level performance was patchy. To detect low-flying aircraft, the low-looking chain home low, or CHL station, was introduced. A CHL station opened in early 1940 at Flamborough Head, near the lighthouse. The site was only 130 feet above sea level, and at this height performance was poor. So by April it was decided to move the station to the 360-foot high Standard Hill, about a quarter mile inland of the cliffs at Bempton. By July the Bempton site had a billet for the army, a cookhouse, a combined headquarters and sick bay, an operations block with a CHL head inside a blast wall, and a small toilet block. The site was defended by 2 pillboxes with light anti-aircraft guns. Royal Air Force personnel did not live on the site. They were billeted in the Flamborough Hotel and in local homes. In early versions of the CHL head, the antenna was turned manually. This view of the site from the road shows some of the developments that had taken place during the previous year. New buildings had been erected. There was another billet, 2 air raid shelters, a guard room, and for defence there were 4 machine gun emplacements. Other additions included a static water tank for firefighting and a storage area for the coal used for heating. A new idea was tried out at Bempton. It comprised a circle of telegraph poles with timber and canvas slats placed around the radar head to protect it from high winds. It appears that it worked well. It did not reduce the range as had been feared. There were 2 major additions in 1942, a Type 54 chain home extra low or CHEL head and a completely new 1941 Type CHL site. The Type 54 CHEL had an operations building at the foot of a 200-foot tower. The tower was equipped with a 2-man lift to carry personnel to the transmitter cabin and antenna at the top. If the lift broke down, the only alternative was climbing 10 20-foot ladders. Mounted at the top of the tower was a dish aerial commonly known as a dustbin lid, which could track aircraft flying at a height of 50 to 100 feet at a distance of up to 30 miles. In addition to tracking aircraft, Bempton reported coastal shipping to the naval plot at Immingham. The Type 54's extra low cover was ideal for this task. The new 1941 Type chain home low site was built about a quarter of a mile closer to the cliff edge at a point where the later 1950s Rotor station was built. This was the final major development at Bempton during the Second World War. This new CHL head and the Type 54 on the old site were still being used for training by RAF Staxton Wold when the new CW station came under RAF command in August 1952. From 1945, Bempton was inactive. Then, in 1949, the threatening international situation led Britain to restore and improve the wartime radar defences. Bempton was reopened. In 1950 it was decided that Bempton was to become one of 8 centimetric early warning or CEW stations as part of the new Rotor plan. The effective bombing of German surface radar stations in World War II led to the decision to build the R1 bunker for the CEW stations underground. At the CHL site near the cliff edge, a hole 400 feet across and 60 feet deep was excavated into the chalk, into which the reinforced concrete R1 bunker was constructed. The entire structure was then covered with up to 10 feet of earth. The structure consisted of the bungalow with the stairwell leading to the gently sloping 300-foot long entrance tunnel. On the right of the tunnel are the foul air and cable ducts, the main operational part of the bunker, and at the far end of the main block are the warm air and emergency exit. Only the bungalow, the 3 ducts and the emergency exit projected above the ground. Beneath the bunker there was a structure built to house the radar photographic display system. The popular name for this structure was the udder. The bunker was a concrete box with 10-foot walls, floor and roof. The main interior space was 98 feet long, 57 feet wide and 18 feet high. It had a stiffening wall pierced by 5 doorways down its length. In the floor was the 20-foot wide udder well. Brick walls, 3.5 feet high, provided support for the false floor and room partitions. 6-inch deep steel beams were laid on the walls and cable trays were suspended from the beams. These trays carried a vast amount of cabling connecting the equipment in the radar office and the operations rooms. Wooden strips to support teak floor panels were fitted to the beams. Ducting for the extensive air conditioning and apparatus cooling was installed. Finally, timber-framed fiberboard walls were inserted, enclosing the plant and GPO rooms, the GPO and track telling rooms, the combined filter plot, the track telling and the radar office, and the workshop. The workshop and the CFP partitions were removed in the second phase of Rotor. Construction of the main corridor and various other rooms on the other side of the central stiffening wall was similar, except that instead of fiberboard walls, most of the partitions were built of brick. The R1 bunker at topside was complete and the radar equipment installed, and on the 2nd of March 1953, number 146 Signals Unit Bempton became operational as a CEW station. The Rotor 1 equipment included 2 Type 14 heads. The Type 14 Mark 9, mounted on a 20-foot gantry, had a 25-foot wide low-looking antenna with a range of up to 100 miles. Experiments at the Telecommunications Research Establishment using 2 Type 14 antenna fixed end-to-end with improved electronics led to the development of Green Garlic, the code name for the revolutionary new head that eventually became the Type 80. The second Type 14 was a Mark 8, fitted with a standard antenna mounted on a concrete plinth near to the emergency exit. The Type 14 head produced a planned position display indicating range and direction, but could not display the height of a target. To find heights, 3 nodding Type 13 Mark 6 height finders were used. The Type 13 head was developed in early 1940s. In operation, the Type 13 was pointed at the target aircraft by the operator using a remote control at the radar screen. The antenna produced a narrow beam which nodded vertically 6 times a minute. The nodding mechanism was quite simple. It consisted of a motor-driven crank and a push rod. On the radar console in the bunker, a range plus angle of elevation display was used to measure the height of the target aircraft. The introduction of Rotor 2 was dependent upon the arrival of the new Type 80 aerial and the fixed coil consoles. To fill the gap until the 80 was available, Bempton received one of 12 ANFPS-3 radars purchased from the USA. The FPS-3 had a range of 200 miles and was mounted on a 50-foot tower. Bempton's FPS-3 suffered some reliability problems but remained in service until October 1956, by which time the Type 80 was fully operational. Type 80 installation started in August 1954, finally becoming operational in September 1955. The re-equipped CW site was enclosed by a wire fence topped with barbed wire. There was just this single entrance to the top secret site. This is a view of the site in its final rotor form, early in 1956, with the new Type 80, the Type 14, the FPS-3 and 3 Type 13s, at last an up-to-date radar station. The mighty Type 80 Mark I, with a range in excess of 240 nautical miles, it had such improved range and performance that it made much of the existing rotor air defense system redundant. A single Type 80 covered such a large area that the number of radar stations needed was considerably reduced. Many stations closed within a few years of the 80 becoming operational. The Type 80 was huge. The reflector was 75 feet wide, 25 feet height, and mounted on a 25-foot high gantry.